Hi, my name is Nancy, and I'm 28 years old. I live alone in a small apartment on the east side of Atlanta, Georgia, and I work as a certified public accountant. On the surface, it may seem like I've built a peaceful life, but that peace was hard-earned, chiseled from years of silent struggle and invisible sacrifices. That evening, I was lying stretched out on my couch, a warm cup of tea in one hand and the other resting against my temple, trying to fight off the dizziness that came from staring too long at my phone screen. The screen lit up again. Mom, Dad, Travis. The same names flashing in a loop like an alarm I no longer had the energy to answer. It had been 6 months since I'd walked out of my parents' home. No grand goodbye, no yelling or slamming doors, just quiet. I packed a few clothes, my old laptop, and my CPA notebook into a worn-out duffel bag and left, just as the sun was setting behind the buildings. No one stopped me. No one even looked up. Mom was watching her favorite TV show, Dad buried in one of his spreadsheets, and Travis sprawled out on the couch with a gaming controller in hand. It was as if I didn't exist.
They were used to that.
I had always been the one who made things work. The good daughter, the reliable one. When bills were overdue, I paid them. When Travis lost yet another job, I stepped in. When Mom and Dad missed deadlines or forgot payments, I was the one they called. I used to believe that doing the right thing would eventually mean something, that if I worked hard, stayed quiet, and made no demands, I'd be appreciated. But I was wrong. The more I did, the more I became invisible. My value to them existed only in what I could provide. That night, as the phone buzzed again on the coffee table, I didn't reach for it. I knew what the messages would say before I even read them, emotional blackmail masked as concern. If you still care about your family, call back right now. But I didn't call. I didn't move. I just closed my eyes and took a long, deep breath. And with every second of silence, I felt a little lighter. 6 months of silence had taught me more about myself than 28 years of constant giving ever had. I had finally stepped out of the cycle, and in that quiet apartment where no one needed anything from me, I began to feel something I had never known before: freedom. I started working when I was 18, not because I wanted extra cash to buy cute clothes or hang out with friends at coffee shops, but because I knew deep down that if I didn't take care of myself, no one else would. While my classmates were being picked up by their parents in clean, air-conditioned cars, I was riding my bike 4 blocks to a local bakery to wipe tables and mop floors after school. When others relaxed at night, I came home after dark, often too tired to do homework, but forcing myself to stay awake. I used my first paycheck to buy a second-hand laptop, not a flashy one, just something functional enough to help me keep up with my school assignments. No one asked me if I needed help balancing my schedule, or if I was getting enough sleep, or even if I had eaten. But I kept going, convinced that hard work was a kind of love, that responsibility was its own reward. Then there was Travis, 4 years older than me, but if you looked at how things worked in our house, you'd think he was the younger one. He dropped out after 2 years of community college and bounced between jobs, quitting as quickly as he was hired. Barista, warehouse loader, bookstore clerk. Each time he left, it was someone else's fault. The manager was toxic. The hours were unreasonable. They didn't understand his creativity. Every excuse was met with sympathy. Mom would stroke his hair and say, "You're trying your best, sweetie." Dad would shake his head and mutter, "People like him just need the right environment." When Travis misplaced the car after a night out, Dad just said, "Accidents happen." When he crashed his laptop, Mom opened a new credit card and bought him a brand new MacBook, saying he needed it to restart his life. And me? When I got a full scholarship to Georgia State University, the only response I got was, "Couldn't you pick a school closer to home?" Travis might need the car. When I landed a job at one of the top CPA firms in Atlanta, Mom sighed and said, "That's so far. Who will take us to our doctor's appointments now?" There were no hugs, no pride, no celebration. I used to believe that if I just kept going, just kept proving myself, eventually they'd see me, not as a wallet or a crutch, but as someone worthy of being loved for who she was, not just what she could provide. But it never came. Not even once. I wasn't heartless. I noticed every little thing. I remembered Dad's favorite snack, Mom's appointments, even Travis's application deadlines. But the more I did, the more I disappeared. At some point, I stopped being a daughter and became an emergency fund. And in that role, no one ever said thank you, they just asked for more. The requests never stopped. What started as occasional help quickly became routine. At first it was small. Can you cover the electricity bill this month? Or we need a little gas money for Dad's car. I agreed because I thought it was temporary and I wanted to be supportive. But then it was, Travis wants to take an online design course. Can you pay for it up front? And we're repainting the house. Can you chip in? And somehow I always did. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that once they stabilized, they'd stand on their own feet. I sent money every few weeks, sometimes $200, sometimes over $1,000, always with the hope that this time would be the last. It never was. No one ever said, "We appreciate you," or even, "Are you managing okay?" There were just more messages, more requests. "This month's a bit tight. Can you send a little more? We'll pay you back next week." But there was never any intention to pay me back. I worked 50 to 60 hours a week during tax season, barely sleeping, barely seeing daylight. I'd come home exhausted, sometimes not even changing out of my work clothes before passing out. Meanwhile, Travis would be lounging on the family couch, controller in hand, yelling at the TV as he played his latest video game. Mom would be making his favorite dish, and Dad would be bragging about how Travis had won an art contest back in the 5th grade, as if that moment had frozen him in glory forever. Every time I walked in after a long day of work, all I saw was a living room full of comfort I was paying for, but not welcome in. The worst part? I had trained myself not to expect anything, not even kindness. I remember telling Mom once, just once, that I was planning to save up and buy a place of my own. Her response wasn't joy or excitement, it was judgment. She said, "A girl buying a house on her own? Aren't you worried people will think no one wants to marry you?" That was the moment something inside me quietly snapped. I realized that no matter what I achieved, no matter how much I gave, I would always be the background character in my own family. Travis would always be the star, the misunderstood genius, the sensitive soul who just needed time. And me? I was the backup plan, the emergency contact, the fallback. But knowing that truth didn't free me. It crushed me first. Then it made me stronger. It started with one message. A late-night text from Mom while I was still at the office finishing up a client's audit. "Nancy, we just lost power. Your dad forgot to pay this month's bill. Can you help? I'll pay you back tomorrow." I didn't even think twice. I sent $1,260 that same night along with a text. "Next time, remind Dad to pay a bit earlier." Of course, tomorrow came and went, and so did the money. Never returned, never mentioned again. After that came the water bill, then the gas stove repair, then supplements for Dad's back pain. One by one, the expenses piled up, each with its own perfectly logical reason. I told myself, it's okay. I make decent money. But I didn't realize I was becoming their only source. They stopped asking gently. The messages turned into directives. "Send Travis $200. He's signing up for a Photoshop class." Dad just had dental work. It was pricey. Here's the account. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a default solution. The sole provider in a 4-person household where 2 worked part-time at best and 1 gamed all day. Then came the biggest request. One afternoon, as I was preparing to submit a mortgage application to finally buy my own apartment, my phone rang.
Dad.
His voice was calm but firm. "Nancy, we're in a bit of a bind with the bank. The business is struggling more than we thought. If we don't find some support soon, we might have to shut everything down." I froze. That business, modest as it was the reason we had a roof over our heads when I was younger. I had grown up in that small storefront, seen them work long hours when I was a child. I still remembered sitting behind the counter doing my homework while Dad tried to manage orders. My heart hesitated. "How much do you need?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer would be more than I could comfortably give. "About $980 a month."
Just for a few months.
Just until we get back on our feet, he said. And I agreed. That same night, I canceled the deposit I was about to make on the apartment I had been dreaming about. I transferred the money and told myself it was temporary. 3 months.
6 at most.
But it wasn't 3 months. It turned into 3 years. 3 years of monthly payments, quietly sent without question. In total, I gave them over $25,000, not counting all the extras like car insurance, roof patching, and birthday gifts for Travis. And through all that, I never once heard a thank you. Instead, the more I gave, the more they expected. No one ever paused to ask, "Can you afford this?" They just kept taking like it was normal. Like I owed them my entire paycheck for choosing to be born into this family. I wasn't just financially drained, I was spiritually hollowed out. There were mornings I avoided checking my bank app because just seeing the balance would make me feel like I was drowning. I was living in a cramped rental, eating instant noodles for days at a time, while my money went to patch a business no one even tried to fix properly. I used to believe that being strong meant carrying everything on my back. But I was wrong. It didn't make me strong. It just made me sink deeper into a swamp called sacrifice. It was a Sunday afternoon, the sky heavy with clouds as the first drops of rain began to fall. I had just finished a grueling weekend shift, my body aching, my mind numb. I stopped by the grocery store on the way to my parents' house, an old habit I hadn't yet broken. Salmon, vegetables, some frozen meals. Things they liked. I drove the familiar 40 minutes to the house I hadn't slept in for over a year, arms full of bags, soaked by the drizzle. When I stepped into the kitchen, no one greeted me. Instead, Mom was already there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Nancy, we need to talk," she said. Before I could even take a breath, she continued, her tone brittle. "What you've been sending each month, it's no longer enough." I froze. For a moment, I thought I misheard her. "Not enough?" I asked. "What are you talking about?" Dad stepped in from the living room, his face set like stone. "You live alone. You make good money. We're struggling every day. Doesn't that seem unfair to you?" I looked at the two people who raised me and now stood there demanding more, like my stability was a crime against their comfort. "I've paid the business expenses for 3 years," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Utilities, medical costs, insurance, repairs, and it's still not enough?" That's when I heard him, Travis. He was, as always, lounging on the couch, game controller in hand, feet on the table. Without even looking up, he chimed in, "It's not like you're hurting. What's wrong with helping a little more?" My vision blurred. I turned and looked at him, the 32-year-old man who had never paid a bill in his life. "Sharing goes both ways, Travis," I said, ice in my voice. "All you ever do is take." "That's enough, Nancy." Mom snapped. "You're being disrespectful." My breath caught in my chest. "I'm disrespectful for telling the truth?" I asked. Mom's lips tightened into that familiar line, the one she used to shut down anything she didn't want to hear. "If it's that much of a burden," she said, each word like a blade, "then you can walk out that door. And don't bother coming back." Time stopped. That sentence, if only she knew how many times I had already heard it in my head. But this time, it wasn't just a thought. It was real. No one pulled me back. No one tried to stop me. They just waited, daring me to leave. I dropped the grocery bags on the table, bags I hadn't even opened. I didn't place anything in the fridge like I usually did. I just stood there, letting the silence settle. "All right," I said, calm and clear. "If that's how you feel, then I hear you loud and clear." I turned and walked out, each step heavy but certain. The rain outside soaked through my clothes, my shoes, my hair. But for the first time, I didn't feel cold. I felt light, as if the chains I had carried for years had finally fallen off. I didn't drive straight home. I stopped at a gas station, parked the car, and pulled up my contact list.
Mom.
Dad. Travis. Slowly, one by one, I hit block. I didn't know what chaos would unfold when they realized their personal ATM had gone silent. I didn't know what would come next. But I knew one thing for sure. This time, I wasn't coming back. Not out of pride, not out of anger, but because I had finally learned that love without respect is just manipulation, and I was done being manipulated. My new apartment wasn't glamorous. It was on the third floor of an aging building with chipped white paint and creaky wooden floors that echoed every step. The hallway always smelled faintly of old wood and rain. But to me, it was heaven. No one knocked at my door asking for gas money. No one texted at midnight needing help with a dental bill. No one demanded that I drop everything and rush over with groceries they wouldn't even acknowledge. I moved in with just 2 suitcases, an old comforter, and the kind of weariness that doesn't go away overnight. But something changed in that space. I started sleeping through the night. I started eating meals without guilt. Each morning, I made coffee, opened the window, and let the light pour in like something sacred. There was no TV blaring, no complaints, no judgment, just quiet. I had never known how healing silence could be. On weekends, I walked through Piedmont Park, letting the sounds of other people's lives fill the void mine used to carry. Sometimes I read. Sometimes I just sat and watched the water, wondering how I ever mistook sacrifice for love. I stopped sending money, stopped answering calls. I deleted the payment reminders I had set for their bills. I unsubscribed from their expectations. My bank account slowly began to recover. I built a budget, not for someone else's survival, but for my own. I started saving. The number wasn't huge, but it was mine.
And it grew.
And for the first time, I allowed myself to want things, small things like a good pair of walking shoes, a nicer chair for my desk, a weekend trip I'd always postponed. I even reconnected with Bella, a college friend I hadn't seen in years. We had coffee and laughed about things that had nothing to do with family or obligations. She told me, "You look like someone who's finally breathing again." And she was right. I was healing, not in grand, sweeping moments, but in quiet, steady ones. I stopped just existing and started living. There were nights when I still wondered if I had gone too far, if cutting all ties was too harsh. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, the guilt creeping in like fog. What if they lost the business? What if they had no place to go? But then I'd remind myself, I carried that family for nearly a decade. And not once did they ask if I was okay. Not once did they offer to carry even a piece of the weight they piled on me. I wasn't abandoning them. I was choosing myself. I had been everyone's foundation for so long that I forgot I was allowed to build my own life. And for the first time, I wasn't drowning. I was learning to float. It had been nearly 6 months since I cut all contact when the messages started creeping back in. At first, it was a simple text from Mom. "Nancy, your dad just got a warning letter from the bank. Something's going on. Please call." I read it and set my phone down. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew what something really meant. It wasn't about health. It wasn't about safety. It was always about money. A few days later, Dad called. Then again. And again. The voicemails shifted in tone, first calm, then pleading, then resentful. "Are you really going to abandon your family?" Mom wrote. "We sacrificed so much for you." Travis left a sharp voicemail. "You should know this isn't a joke. Everyone's struggling. You're being selfish." I didn't answer. I changed my work number. I blocked a few contacts. But I still read their messages. I guess part of me couldn't stop myself. They were long, emotional paragraphs, accusing me of becoming cold, different, heartless. But I wasn't cold. I was healing. One Monday afternoon, I stepped out of a meeting just as my phone buzzed again. It was another voicemail from Travis. This time, he wasn't pleading, he was furious. "What do you think you're doing? Feeling proud of yourself? You don't get to walk away from your family just because it's easier now. If Mom and Dad lose the business, that'll be your fault." I froze in the office parking lot, the words echoing in my ears. I played it 3 times, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all the money I'd sent, after everything I gave up, I was still the villain. I unlocked my phone and typed a message I didn't plan to send. "I've covered my part and yours for years. If things fall apart now, maybe it's time everyone asked who never did anything." But I deleted it. Because it wouldn't matter. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. I was just a resource. And when that resource ran dry, all they had left was blame. A few days later, I got another message from Dad. Why haven't you paid the business loan this month? The bank is pressing us now. I stared at the screen, stunned. I had stopped all payments months ago. Yet here he was still speaking as if it was my responsibility. But what chilled me most wasn't the message itself. It was that word. Pressing us. I opened my old banking app, the one I used to transfer funds to my dad's business account. I had never looked at it from their side. I had always trusted that once I sent the money, they used it for what they said they would. But now I needed to see. I logged in and scanned the transaction history. Every dollar I'd sent was recorded down to the cent. But something didn't add up. The last actual business loan payment from that account had been made 8 months ago, well before I stopped sending money. My heart sank. I pulled up my own bank records. I'd continued sending money for 3 months after that final loan payment. That was nearly $3,000 unaccounted for.
Gone.
Vanished. Not used for what they begged me for. My breath caught. This wasn't just neglect. This wasn't carelessness. It was betrayal. Cold, deliberate betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, the question repeating over and over in my mind. How long had they been lying to me? The next morning, I called the bank and asked, as someone who had previously helped manage family payments, if they could confirm the loan status. After verifying my information, the representative replied gently, "The account hasn't had a full payment in over 8 months. It's currently under special collections." I thanked her and hung up. My entire world tilted. I sat in silence for a long time, then picked up my phone and typed a message to Dad. I just spoke with the bank. The business loan is 8 months overdue. I kept sending money. What happened? 15 minutes later, the phone rang. I didn't answer. The second call came, then a third. Finally, I picked up. "Nancy," Dad said, his voice tired and tight. "I guess you found out about the bank." "I didn't just find out," I replied. "I confirmed it. I sent money, and you didn't use it for the loan. Where did it go?" He hesitated. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," I said flatly. That's when Mom took the phone. "Don't speak to your father like that," she snapped. "You don't understand the pressure we've been under. Everything's been falling apart since you left." I clenched the phone.
No.
Everything started falling apart when I stopped paying for everyone's comfort. "You're ungrateful," she shouted. "We gave you everything." "No," I said, my voice low and cold. "You took everything," and still had the nerve to say it wasn't enough. I heard a pause. Then Travis jumped in. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. They just need more time." I laughed. "The world doesn't owe me anything. But this family owes me the truth." "You weren't like this before," he said, voice dripping with disdain. "Before," I replied, "I was just stupid." "We'll pay you back," Dad whispered. "We promise." "How many times have I heard that?" I said quietly. "If you lose the business, that's not my fault. It's not my responsibility anymore." "You can't just leave us like this," Mom said, now crying. "I already did," I said. "I'm not helping anymore. Not because I'm cruel, but because I've already done more than enough." And with that, I hung up. After that final phone call, I powered off my phone and placed it face down on the kitchen counter. I didn't touch it for 3 full days. No texts, no calls, no threats, no sobbing voicemails, just silence. And I had never tasted silence so sweet. The next morning, I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and stepped out onto my small balcony. The city was slowly waking up beneath a pale gold sky. I stood there in my faded pajamas, sipping my drink, and felt something rare and beautiful settle inside me. Peace. Real peace. Not the kind you borrow for a few hours before the next emergency arrives. Not the silence before another guilt trip, but the kind that belongs only to you because you've earned it. My apartment was still small. The walls were still thin. But it was mine. Every corner held a choice I had made for myself. No one was calling my name. No one was expecting me to carry the weight of their failures. I was finally allowed to just be. But even peace has its shadows. At night, when there was no more work to do and no more noise to block out my thoughts, the guilt would sneak in. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering, what if they really do lose the business? What if I get a call saying they're homeless? Would I feel guilty? Maybe. But then I'd remember, I kept that business afloat for 3 years. I sacrificed my dreams, my savings, my health, and my happiness to hold it together. And they didn't just take it, they expected it. And when I stopped, they blamed me. I wasn't heartless. I was just done. I listened to the voicemails I had ignored all week. One from Mom. You'll regret this. That business is all we have left. One from Dad. We're out of options. If you don't help, we're finished. And from Travis. You're letting this family sink just because of your pride. I listened to every word, but I didn't cry. I just felt tired. For years, they tied me down not with ropes, but with guilt. With lines like, you're the pride of this family, or we'd be lost without you. But that pride was only pulled out when they needed something. It was never love. It was never gratitude. I thought about all the nights I stayed up crunching numbers for clients, only to wake up to a text from Travis asking for $300 for art supplies. I thought about the one vacation I tried to plan and had to cancel because Mom suddenly forgot to pay their insurance. I thought about her expression the day I told her I was exhausted. Not worry, not care. Just disappointment. Like I had failed her. Even though I was the only one who had never failed them. I sat on the edge of my bed, my fingers brushing the fabric of the old worn blanket I had taken with me when I left. It was the last thing that still smelled like that house. What if they really did lose everything? Would I regret drawing the line? Would I feel like I should have done more? Maybe. But what I knew deep down was that if I hadn't walked away, I would have lost myself completely. I wasn't telling this story to be praised or pitied. I didn't need anyone to say I was right. I just wanted to know, had anyone else ever felt like me? Ever been the good one? The one who held it all together, only to be discarded when they stopped serving others? And if someone out there had felt it too, then maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. My name is Nancy, and I'm not the villain. I'm not selfish. I'm just someone who finally chose to live. If this story moved you or reminded you of someone you know, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and we'd love to hear from you. And if you want more real, powerful stories about strength, family, and finding your voice, make sure to subscribe to the channel. New stories are shared every week. Thank you for watching.